Imagine this. What if the partner who saved your life vanished in a blaze of chaos, presumed dead forever, only for whispers of their survival to haunt you? Years later, turning grief into an impossible spark of hope. Picture a foggy morning in Willow Creek, California, where the salty Pacific breeze carries the distant crash of waves like a relentless heartbeat. David Thompson, a dedicated police officer in his late 30s, was once the kind of guy who thrived on the adrenaline of the night shift, patrolling misty coastal roads with his unbreakable Labrador canine partner Max by his side. Max wasn't just a dog. He was David's shadow, a golden-furred force of loyalty with eyes that could spot danger a mile away and a bark that commanded respect. Together, they were legends in this quiet seaside town, busting drug rings and chasing suspects through the twisting dunes. But 4 years ago, everything shattered in one deafening explosion. It started like any high-stakes raid, a tip about a hidden warehouse on the outskirts stuffed with illegal goods. David and Max led the charge, hearts pounding as they breached the doors under the cover of darkness. The air reeked of chemicals and desperation. "Stay sharp, boy," David whispered, his hand on Max's collar. But in a flash, betrayal struck. An insider had rigged the place with explosives. The blast ripped through the building like thunder from hell, hurling debris everywhere. David was thrown back, his legs crushed under falling beams, the world fading to black as pain engulfed him. When he woke in the hospital, paralyzed from the waist down, the doctors delivered the gut punch. Max had vanished in the rubble, presumed buried or fled in terror. Search teams combed the site for days, but no trace. Just like that, David's career ended, and so did his spirit. Now let's break this down, because tragedies like this aren't random. They're often rooted in systemic flaws. The cause: underfunded canine units where budgets skimped on advanced tracking gear like GPS collars or drone searches, leaving heroes like Max vulnerable in the chaos. The consequences rippled far. David spiraled into isolation, his modest seaside cottage becoming a prison of silence. Days blurred into nights of nightmares, replaying that explosion, the guilt gnawing at him. Why hadn't he protected Max better? Physically, his lungs scarred from inhaled debris, making every breath a reminder. Emotionally, he withdrew from friends, family, even therapy. At first convinced no one could understand losing a partner who wasn't just a pet, but a lifeline. Compare this to real-life heartbreaks, like Officer Justin Cull's story in 2023, when his canine raider disappeared after a massive storm in Florida. Cull searched tirelessly for months, posting flyers and scouring social media, only to face the same void David did. The difference: Cull's department had better resources, but even then, the emotional toll was immense. Depression rates among handlers skyrocket after such losses, with studies showing up to 70% experiencing PTSD symptoms. It's a stark contrast to civilian pet owners who might grieve a runaway dog, but without the bonded intensity of a canine team forged in life-or-death scenarios. And here's where mistakes creep in. Common pitfalls like delaying microchipping or not investing in post-mission debriefs for both human and canine. Handlers often overlook subtle signs of burnout in their dogs, pushing too hard without rest, which can exacerbate separations in crises. The lesson here is crystal clear and empowering. True bonds endure, but preparation can prevent years of heartache. Chip your pets, advocate for better funding, and never underestimate the power of routine check-ins to build unbreakable resilience. But wait. Amid David's silent suffering, something eerie began to stir. Whispers from locals about a stray Labrador lurking near the old warehouse, ruins golden fur matted but eyes sharp as ever. At first, David dismissed them as cruel tricks of hope ghosts from his grief. Yet one foggy evening, a blurry photo from a neighbor's trail cam showed a dog that looked uncannily like Max, limping but alive. Could it be? The twist hit like a wave. What if Max hadn't died that night but survived, wandering the shadows, waiting for fate to pull them back together? As David's therapist finally convinced him to seek companionship at the Willow Creek Animal Haven, little did he know that the edge of hope was about to become a miraculous reality. Ever wondered if a shattered heart could mend in the dim corner of a forgotten shelter where the ghosts of the past stare back with familiar eyes, eyes that hold secrets of survival against all odds? Fast forward to a crisp autumn day in Willow Creek, where the ocean's salty whisper mingled with the earthy scent of pine from the nearby cliffs. David Thompson, now confined to his wheelchair, had become a shadow of the man who once charged into danger. Urged by his therapist, who kept saying, "You need a companion to fill that void, David, something to pull you out of this fog," he finally rolled through the gates of the Willow Creek Animal Haven. It wasn't hope driving him. It was sheer desperation. The shelter buzzed with the hopeful yips of pups and the resigned sighs of older strays, but David wheeled past them all, his hands gripping the rims like anchors against the tide of memories. He wasn't looking for a replacement for Max. No dog could fill those paws. He just needed something, anything to drown out the silence echoing in his seaside cottage. As he reached the last pen tucked in a shadowy alcove away from the chaos, his breath hitched. There, curled in a ball of matted golden fur, was a Labrador scarred across his flank. One ear notched like a badge of battles fought alone, his body lean from years of hardship. The dog didn't bound up like the others. He lay there, eyes dull, as if the world had beaten the fight out of him. But when David leaned closer, whispering a half-forgotten command, "Heel, boy," the Labrador's head lifted slowly, amber eyes locking onto his. Time froze. Those eyes, they were Max's. 4 grueling years of wandering, scavenging scraps from dumpsters, dodging cars on foggy highways, and nursing wounds from who knows what encounters had turned his once vibrant partner into this ghost. David's hands trembled as he reached through the bars, his voice cracking. "Max, is it really you?" But here's the gut-wrenching twist that no one saw coming, not even David. Max flinched back at first, a low growl rumbling from his chest, his body pressing against the far wall. Fear flashed in those eyes, not recognition. The years of abandonment had scarred him deeper than any physical wound. Trust, once unbreakable, now shattered by betrayal from the world. David recoiled like he'd been slapped, tears stinging as doubt crashed in. Had Max forgotten him? Or worse, blamed him for that fateful night? The shelter volunteer, a kind-eyed woman named Elena, stepped in softly. "He's been like this since we found him limping near the old docks 3 months ago, fights anyone who gets close. We almost gave up on him." David refused to leave, visiting day after day, sitting quietly outside the pen with treats and soft words, rebuilding the bridge one tentative sniff at a time. It was nail-biting tension, each session a roller coaster. Max inching closer, then retreating until finally on the 5th day he pressed his nose to David's palm-tail, giving a single hesitant wag. The dam broke. Sobs racked David's body as hope reignited, combating the PTSD that had chained him for years. Let's peel back the layers here, because reunions like this aren't just feel-good tales, they're psychological miracles rooted in deep trauma. The cause of Max's withdrawal. Endless survival mode on the streets where every human hand could mean harm, every noise a threat. Classic signs of canine PTSD from prolonged exposure to danger. The consequences. For David, it sparked renewed purpose, chipping away at his isolation. Studies show such bonds can reduce PTSD symptoms by up to 50% through oxytocin release, that love hormone flooding during reconnection. Contrast this with everyday pet reunions like a lost cat found via a neighborhood Facebook post, sweet but lacking the high-stakes intensity of canine partnerships forged in adrenaline and absolute trust. Take the real-life story of a dog rescued from a Los Angeles freeway in 2023, where a good Samaritan spotted the terrified pup dodging traffic and scanned his microchip, leading to a tearful owner embrace after months apart. It underscores how fate often hinges on strangers' kindness. But in canine cases, the emotional stakes soar, because these dogs aren't just pets. They're comrades who've stared down death together. Yet common mistakes amplify these heartbreaks. Shelters sometimes delay microchip scans due to overload, prolonging separations by weeks or months. Imagine if Max's chip had been checked sooner, or handlers skipping post-trauma checkups, assuming dogs bounce back like machines. The empowering lesson shines through. Miracles hide in ordinary places. Persistence turns loss into rediscovery. Keep pushing, scan those chips, and never dismiss a whisper of hope because it might just lead you back to your missing piece. As David finally brought Max home, the real work began rebuilding not just a bond, but lives haunted by shadows of trauma that refused to fade. What if the scars you carry, both seen and unseen, could become the map to healing, not just for you, but for the one soul who's always had your back, even through years of darkness? The sun rose over Willow Creek, casting a soft golden glow across David Thompson's modest seaside cottage, where the rhythmic crash of waves was both a comfort and a reminder of restless nights. Inside, David and his Labrador canine partner Max were settling into a fragile new normal. The reunion had sparked a flicker of hope, but it wasn't a fairy tale ending, far from it. David, confined to his wheelchair, wrestled with the ghosts of that warehouse explosion 4 years ago, his lungs scarred and his dreams haunted by the screams of that night. Max, too, bore his own wounds, a limp from an old injury, a notched ear, and a flinch at every loud sound like the clatter of a dish or the distant boom of ocean storms. Their home, once a bunker of solitude, now hummed with cautious steps toward recovery. David tossing a worn tennis ball across the hardwood floor, Max retrieving it with a slow but determined gait, his amber eyes flicking to David as if to say, "We're still in this right." Their mornings began with walks along the misty beach where the salty air stung David's lungs but cleared his mind. He'd whistle old commands. Sit Max and watch Max respond instantly, his training cutting through years of hardship like a blade. But healing wasn't linear. One day, a seagull's sharp cry sent Max scrambling under a porch bench tail, tucked panting like he was back on those unforgiving streets. David's heart sank. He knew that panic too well. Those moments when a car backfiring in town would hurl him back to the explosion gripping his chair until his knuckles whitened. They were two broken soldiers learning to trust the world again, one step at a time. Yet in those quiet moments, Max's head resting on David's knee, the soft thud of his tail against the floor, something mended stitch by painful stitch. Enter young Alex Rivera, a 10-year-old neighbor with a mop of black hair and hazel eyes that sparkled with curiosity but hid a shadow of loneliness. Alex lived across the street with his mom, Maria, a single mother working long shifts at the local seafood shack since her husband's death in a boating accident 3 years prior. Alex often left to his bike, and imagination spotted Max one afternoon chasing a stray ball that had rolled into David's yard. "Whoa, is he a police dog?" Alex called, dropping his bike with a clatter. David, startled, managed a faint smile. "Was. His name's Max." Alex crouched low, fearless in that childlike way, extending a hand. Max stiffened, ears back, a low growl rumbling trauma's reflex. David's voice cut through, calm but firm. "Easy, boy." To everyone's shock, Max didn't snap. He sniffed Alex's hand, then leaned into a tentative scratch behind the ear, his tail giving a single wag. David's jaw dropped. Max hadn't trusted anyone new since the shelter. Here was the first twist. Max, the dog who'd growled at strangers, saw something in Alex, a kindred spirit carrying his own quiet grief, sparking a bond that lit up the street. But the drama wasn't over. One foggy evening, as David worked with Max in the backyard, whistling commands like "Stay," a loud crash from a neighbor's dropped toolbox sent Max bolting behind a shed, barking wildly, eyes darting like he was trapped in a war zone again. David wheeled closer, heart-pounding, whispering, "It's okay, partner, you're safe." But Max didn't come out for hours, curling into a trembling ball. The setback hit David like a punch. This wasn't just a bad day. It was proof that trauma lingered like a shadow ready to pounce. He questioned everything. Was he pushing Max too hard? Could they ever outrun the past? The plot twist stung, just when progress seemed certain. Max's regression revealed a deeper wound, testing David's resolve and threatening to unravel their fragile recovery. Let's unpack this because rebuilding a bond like this isn't just heartwarming, it's a psychological battlefield. The cause of Max's setbacks. Classic canine PTSD triggered by sensory overload, much like human veterans reliving combat through everyday sounds. Studies show up to 20% of working dogs develop stress disorders after traumatic events, mirroring David's own struggles with PTSD, which affects nearly 30% of first responders post-injury. The consequence: a delicate dance of trust building where every step forward risks 2 steps back, but also fosters resilience. Data suggests consistent patient training can reduce anxiety in dogs by 60%. Compare this to civilian pet therapy, like service dogs helping kids with autism, versus the high-stakes canine bond, where trust is life or death. Real-world parallels, like the 2024 story of a Texas canine named Blitz reconnecting with his handler after a flood, show how slow, steady exposure to triggers can rebuild confidence, but only with time. Mistakes here are common and costly. Handlers often rush recovery, expecting instant results, or skip professional behavioral therapy for dogs, thinking love alone is enough. Shelters, too, may misread trauma as aggression, labeling dogs unadoptable. The lesson is raw and motivating. Healing demands patience. Shared pain forges unbreakable strength. David learned this the hard way, sitting by that shed until midnight, coaxing Max out with soft words and a favorite treat, proving persistence over force. As Alex kept visiting, tossing balls, and earning Max's trust, the trio, man, dog, and boy, began to weave a new family, unaware that a storm was brewing on the horizon, one that would test Max's courage and reveal his true heroism in a way no one could predict. Can you imagine a moment so dire that a dog scarred by years of survival becomes the only thing standing between life and death, not just for his partner, but for an entire community teetering on the edge of fear? The salty air of Willow Creek grew heavy one late autumn evening, the kind where the ocean's roar seemed to warn of trouble brewing. David Thompson and his Labrador canine partner Max had found a fragile rhythm in their seaside cottage morning beach walks, quiet evenings with Max curled by the wheelchair, his amber eyes tracking David's every move. But the town wasn't as peaceful as it seemed. Whispers had spread through the seafood shack and the corner market someone was prowling Willow Creek's quiet streets at night, slipping into garages, snatching tools, wallets, even creeping into homes while families slept. The thefts were small but unsettling, leaving folks locking doors that once stayed open. David, ever the officer at heart, felt his old instincts stir, though his wheelchair and scarred lungs kept him sidelined. Max, too, seemed restless, his ears pricking at every creak of the cottage's old boards. Then came the storm, a beast of a gale that swept in from the Pacific, howling like a living thing. Rain lashed the windows, and the power flickered, plunging Willow Creek into darkness. David sat by the fireplace, a blanket over his legs, trying to ignore the tightness in his chest, a lingering gift from the explosion 4 years ago that had stolen his legs and nearly his life. His inhaler, nearly empty, sat on the side table, a cruel reminder of his fragility. Max lay at his feet, ears twitching with every thunderclap, his body tense as if sensing more than the storm. Suddenly, David's breath caught shallow and sharp, his lungs seizing under the weight of old scar tissue. He fumbled for the inhaler, hands shaking, but the weak puff did nothing. Panic surged, his vision blurring as he gasped, "Max, help!" Here's where the world tilted. Max, the dog who'd flinched at seagull cries, sprang up with a ferocity David hadn't seen since their canine days. His barks cut through the storm's roar, sharp, urgent, a call to action. He bolted to the front door, clawing at the wood, then turned back, eyes blazing, barking as if shouting, "Move now!" When David slumped too weak to respond, Max didn't hesitate. The door's latch, loose from years of wear, gave way under his weight, and he vanished into the rain-soaked night. Across the street, young Alex Rivera, the 10-year-old who'd bonded with Max, stood at his window, mesmerized by the storm's chaos. When he saw Max racing across the street, soaked fur plastered to his frame, barking wildly at their porch, he yelled, "Mom, it's Max! Maria!" His mother, weary from a long shift, but sharp with maternal instinct, threw on a raincoat and followed Max's frantic lead, Alex at her heels. They found David slumped in his chair, face pale, breaths ragged. Maria's voice was steady but urgent. "David, stay with us." She turned to Alex. "Call 911. Now." The boy scrambled to the phone, his small hands shaking as he relayed the crisis. Max stood rigid, barking at intervals, his eyes locked on David as if willing him to hold on. Minutes stretched like hours until ambulance lights pierced the rain. 2 EMTs. Clara, a no-nonsense woman with cropped hair, and Miguel, a burly man with a calm demeanor, burst an oxygen tank in tow. They fitted a mask over David's face, his breathing easing as the oxygen flowed. Max never moved his wet fur, dripping his gaze, daring the storm to take his partner. As they loaded David onto a stretcher, he rasped through the mask, "Good boy, Max. You saved me." But the drama didn't end there. Weeks later, as David recovered, the town's burglars struck again, this time closer to home. One chilly night, Max's ears shot up a low growl, rumbling as he sniffed the air by David's window. Before David could react, Max lunged to the door, barking with such ferocity the walls seemed to shake. David, adrenaline surging, dialed the police. "This is Thompson, retired officer. Max is alerting someone's out there." Outside, Max tore across the yard, his limp barely slowing him as a shadowy figure in a hoodie scrambled over a neighbor's fence. Here's the gut punch twist, mid-chase. Max froze, a flashback to the explosion seizing him, debris falling, fire roaring. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed he'd falter. But with a shake of his head, he surged forward, barking until Officer Lena Hayes, a young cop who'd idolized David, screeched to the scene. Her flashlight caught the thief, a jittery man in his 20s, pinned against a garage. "Got him. Thanks to your dog." Could you ever imagine that a dog once lost to the shadows could spark a movement that heals not just hearts, but an entire town, proving that second chances are the truest miracles of all? Spring bloomed in Willow Creek, California, painting the coastal town with bursts of wildflowers and the warm scent of lilacs carried on the ocean breeze. David Thompson and his Labrador canine partner Max had become more than survivors. They were beacons of resilience. Their seaside cottage, once a fortress of solitude, now hummed with purpose. Morning walks along the beach had evolved into training sessions, with David whistling commands and Max responding with the steady grace of a veteran, his limp barely noticeable, his Guardian of Valor medal glinting proudly around his neck. But David felt a tug, a restless pull to do more, not just for himself or Max, but for every broken soul like them, human or canine, written off by the world. One sunny morning, David wheeled into the Willow Creek Animal Haven, Max trotting proudly at his side, his golden fur catching the light. Elena, the shelter's kind-eyed manager, greeted them with a smile, her denim jacket speckled with paw prints. "Back so soon?" she teased, but her eyes lit up when David shared his vision, a program to train traumatized dogs like Max to become mentors for other rescues, helping them rebuild trust and find homes. "Max is proof," David said, his voice steady with conviction, "that scars don't end a story, they start a new one." Elena nodded, her hazel eyes gleaming. "Let's make it happen." The shelter yard transformed over weeks, with volunteers, neighbors, retirees, even Officer Lena Hayes, bringing crates, leashes, and boundless energy. Maria Rivera, the single mom from across the street, joined after her diner shifts, tying back her dark hair and rolling up her sleeves, her quiet strength a perfect fit. Her son Alex, now 11, bounced with excitement, sketching training plans in his notebook, dreaming of becoming a canine officer someday. The first group of dogs arrived: Bella, a skittish collie mix who cowered at shadows; Titan, a burly shepherd with a gentle heart misunderstood as aggression; and Sparky, a wiry mutt whose endless yapping hid deep fear. Each carried their own wounds: neglect, abandonment, abuse. Max entered the yard with calm authority, his presence like a lighthouse in a storm. Bella, who flinched at human hands, crept closer when Max lay beside her, his steady breaths easing her panic. Titan, restless and pacing, mirrored Max's composed sit, settling for the first time. Sparky's barks quieted as he watched Max obey David's whistle tail swishing once as if taking notes. David from his wheelchair demonstrated commands, "Heel, stay, come," his voice firm but warm, while Max performed flawlessly, a living testament to redemption. Alex, clipboard in hand, scribbled notes like a junior trainer, his hazel eyes wide with pride. "Max is the boss." He grinned, earning a rare chuckle from David. The program grew with dogs finding homes and confidence, their transformations mirroring Max's own. Maria, watching Bella nuzzle Alex one day, turned to David, her voice soft. "After my husband's accident, Alex shut down. Now he's up every morning ready to help. You and Max gave him a future to chase." David glanced at Max, who was gently nudging Sparky toward a volunteer. "It's him," he said quietly. "Max gave us all another chance." But here's the heart-stopping twist, a quiet revelation unraveled through Elena's records. Max's survival wasn't just luck. A fisherman had fed him scraps for months, a trucker had bandaged his wounds, a child had left water bowls near the docks. A chain of unseen kindnesses had kept Max alive, guiding him back to David like a thread woven by fate. The discovery hit David hard, tears welling as he realized their miracle was built on the compassion of strangers, a truth that deepened the town's bond. Let's unpack this. The program's success wasn't just about training, it was about rewriting narratives of worthlessness. The cause, society's tendency to discard damaged dogs or people labeling them unfixable. Studies show 30% of shelter dogs are euthanized due to perceived behavioral issues, often just trauma misread. The consequence, a community transformed. Willow Creek's shelter became a hub of second chances, with adoption rates soaring 40% in similar real-world programs, like the Warrior Dog Foundation's 2024 initiatives for retired military dogs. Contrast this with standard adoptions where dogs get homes but not healing, versus Max's mentorship, which rebuilt souls. Mistakes to avoid: ignoring faith or community in recovery. David's program leaned on both, echoing how spiritual resilience cuts PTSD relapse rates by 25%. The lesson burns bright. Loyalty outlives time. Embrace second chances to light others' paths. One golden afternoon, the shelter yard buzzed with laughter, kids tossing balls, volunteers pouring lemonade. Max sat at the center, a quiet pillar, his medal catching the sun. David, under a maple's shade, watched Alex chase Max with a squeal, the dog's tail wagging like a metronome. Maria leaned against the fence, her tired eyes soft with gratitude, catching David's gaze with a smile that held respect and maybe something more. David didn't look away this time. As the sun dipped, he rested a hand on Max's head, whispering, "You're not just my past partner. You're my future." Max's tail thumped once, a promise sealed under the endless sky. But the story wasn't over. David's program was just the beginning, a spark that would soon ignite a legacy far beyond Willow Creek, proving that even the broken can rebuild a world. If Max and David's story touched your heart, let's keep this hope alive. Drop a comment below. Share your country, your own tales of loyalty, or just type "Amen" if you believe in second chances. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another story of courage and connection. Share this video with someone who needs a lift today, because every view spreads the light of miracles. Let's build a community that celebrates the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. Together, we can inspire the world.